Okay, so I'm Shay Munns.
I'm Paige Dutel.
And I'm Suzanne Trepanier.
Okay, so the first question for the discussion is, what were your impressions of the CRC article and video by the United Nations? And then what about the article and the videos by Parental Rights? So when I first watched the first video, I was like, oh, this would be good, that's great that people are doing it. And I was like, oh, just watching the video, I was like, oh, that sounds good. And then when I watched the parental rights video, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that all this, like how this all affected everything. And so I was like, oh, never mind, I don't want that. No, we need parental rights. But it was interesting how they made it so convincing, just to me, I guess, but just convincing of like, oh, this is such a good thing. They pointed out all the, like all the good things that it would do, but not the negative parts of it. That's what I thought about those two.
Yeah, I thought similar things, and it just reminded me of like our conversation that we had last week about persuasiveness and how like one of the videos pretty much persuaded people to think that it was good, but then the second one kind of showed you that maybe it's not so good. That was just surprising.
Um, so I didn't watch the videos. um, like I said, I was mixed up in my time. So I'm trying to read the transcription of the videos so I can kind of get an idea of what they were about. Um, so when you were referring to the children's rights, was that part of a video, or were you just talking about the UN children's rights proposal thing?
I believe that it was like the same thing, like the article and the video were like about the same thing.
Okay.
So like the first one about the children's rights, it kind of showed you about like how kids would be taken advantage of in other countries and like how they'd be forced to work long hours, and I'm trying to remember what other big themes were in there. Just how like kids aren't treated fairly all the time. I mean, especially in other countries where they're either trafficked or like or they're forced to work or stuff like that. Whereas like the second video on the parental rights, it was talking about like how if this does go through and everything, that as a parent you can lose your rights to your kids. Like if they say, well, I don't want to go to church, you can't make them go to church.
Right.
Or you can't force them to do anything, and that they could go to I want to say like a social worker, and then the social worker would decide, no, they don't have to do that. And I don't know if it was in that video or the Kelly's presentation, where it was like a couple had lost custody of their kid for a little bit until they agreed that he didn't have to go to church on Sunday and Wednesday, just on Sunday. And if they did make him go, then they would lose custody of him. That's kind of...
Yeah, I think that, so when I was reading over the same thing that you said, Shay, about when you're reading over the objectives of this UN article and thinking, of course, children need to be protected and they need to have, certain rights, and we need to make sure that they're being treated, with respect and all this stuff. But I think that it can become really tricky when you're putting it into some kind of a law, and that you need to be careful that that policies aren't taking away the rights of parents when it comes to how they want to raise their kids. And I just think that that's where the UN, like a lot of the stuff we're learning in this class is about how the UN uses certain wording that maybe kind of flies under the radar and sounds really good, but then when you start to see what those implications are for that wording, then you can see that it's actually advocating for the opposite of what we believe is good for families. So I don't know. I'm glad that we have lawyers on our side that can look through those things and kind of decide if the wording is really, meeting the goals of what we want for families.
Yeah, that's true. Was there anything else, or do you guys want to go on to the next question?
Yeah, I think we could move on.
Okay. So the next one was, if you're from a country where the CRC has already been ratified, what were some of the positive and negative effects? None of us are from another country, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was like, okay. But then it said if you weren't from, or if you're from the U.S., then research a place where the document has been ratified, and what are the positive and negative effects, and how could they benefit or hurt your country with a future ratification. I don't know, I kind of saw there are good things for other countries where the kids won't be forced to work, and then they can have the opportunity to go to school. I know that was another big thing, is like they don't go to school if it's not in place. But I feel like with our country, I think it would hurt us more than it would help, just because I feel like we don't see that a lot, and so more of the negative things would pull through. And just as a parent, I would hate not being able to raise my kids the way I want to raise them, and just like, oh, I feel like with it, I don't know if this is exactly how I feel like it would turn into this, I guess. But it's just like the government would tell you, no, you can't teach them about this religion, or no, you can't teach them about this, and they have to learn about sex at this grade in school and all these different things that it's like, no, I want to be able to teach my kids that, and I want to be able to teach them what I believe and not what the government's telling them that they have to believe, kind of a thing. But that was kind of my thoughts on that. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to our country, that it would be more negative, just because I feel like to compare our country to other countries, that a lot of kids don't have like the respect that they should for their elders or their parents, and I feel like that if they're able to, they would kind of use this against their parents so they don't have to listen to them, and I think that could be really bad.
Oh, I agree. I think that kids would use that against their parents all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the whole idea behind raising kids is kind of changing in our country, and I think it's important to respect kids, but also to understand that children are still inexperienced. They're young. They have. Hi, baby, you're cute. And they have a need to be able to rely on the wisdom of their parents. And I think that in our society, I think that a lot of parents are starting to kind of change and feel like their parents are almost their equal, or their children are almost their equals, and that they have, sometimes, they kind of twist the scriptures where, Jesus Christ talks about becoming as your little children. But he's talking about that we need to be immature. He's telling us that we need to be humble, and so in that context, it's okay. But I think I see a lot of like younger parents thinking, well, my kids, they know more about honesty or truth, or sweet, and so I need to kind of follow their example, kind of thing, and And I don't know, I don't see that. I think that kids need to be taught about how to behave correctly. And I don't think that kids are necessarily all super honest just by nature. My kids lied. So anyway, I don't know. I'm kind of getting off subject a little bit. But I wanted to point out that when we took a trip to Guatemala, um, it's been probably about 5 or 6 years now, and we took our son with us. He happened to be on a school break, and he was in middle school at the time, and he hated school. He didn't know at all. We took him on this trip to Guatemala, and the first thing that he noticed was all of the kids that were um, out begging and trying to sell like little trinkets and stuff. And he asked me, he said, "Mom, why aren't they in school? It's like in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day." I was like, "Honey, they can't afford to go to school. They have to eat. And so they're out here trying to get a few coins so that they can have food for today." And you know, you actually live in a place where it's really a blessing to be able to go and get educated for free. And it changed his perspective a lot because he saw how hard these little kids were working. We took a tour of a volcano, and our guide, his name was Herbie, and he was like 7 years old, and he acted like this little man. He guided the horse, he helped me get on the horse, he guided the horse up to this volcano, and that was his job. And so, anyway, when you see things like that, then you can understand how maybe the UN is considering the world, and so what the kids are dealing with there. It's just a completely different thing. So I don't know, kind of a tough question.
Susie, I like that example you used. That reminded me of like my husband and I. We went on a cruise for our honeymoon, and we went to Ensenada, Mexico.
Yeah.
And we went down to like the blowhole down there, and it's like when you get off this bus, it's like all these little kids just come up to you, and they have like a cardboard box with like gum in it and just little trinkets and stuff that they've made.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I mean, they just like bombard you, like, you want to buy it, you want to buy it, and it's so sad to see, like, you know, they're not in school or anything, and that's how they're making money.
Yeah.
So I do agree. Like, so I mean, it's definitely helpful to some countries. Are you guys ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. So it says, how did Kelly's presentation help your understanding of the ecological approach to family advocacy? So with her, I really liked her presentation. I think it did help me a little bit, help me understand what all the systems were. Like, because when I first opened the book, I was like, what are we talking about? I was like, this is not like a biology class. I was like, what are we doing, all these systems? And then as I read, I understood a little bit more, but her presentation helped with that. I guess, understand it, but I feel like, I don't know, when I was watching her thing, I felt kind of motivated, like, wow, I want to go out and I want to do some of this stuff. I think it'd be so cool to be able to be a part of it and to help people understand what's going on. And I didn't realize that people met, you know, to make up these rules, or, I mean, make up these documents. I didn't realize that, and then, like how she said, it was just kind of like stuff gets snuck under the table, kind of. I never knew that, so it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, which is really nice.
I really liked the examples that she used of how she started, like, becoming an advocate. And I've learned a little bit about this from another class, because one of the chapter that we had to read, I actually have that book for another class, so I just read it out of the book. and because it was like the first chapter, I had learned it a couple weeks ago, so it was just a good refresher. But watching her presentation and hearing her stories about when she was really young and then as she like kept getting older, how she kept just becoming more passionate about different things, I thought was really interesting. And her stories kind of just made it easier to understand the different systems and why certain people are passionate about different systems more than others.
Um, so Paige, are you taking the community, family, and society or something class? Like,
Yeah, I forget. All my classes always end up like running into each other.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think I dropped it this semester because, like I said, I ended up taking too many classes. But
Yeah.
I had that book also because I was taking this class and I had read that chapter as well. So this was kind of a refresher too for me. But
Yeah.
the thing that I got different from learning about it in this class was how, because I was kind of thinking of each system being kind of, I mean, separate, connected, but kind of separate. But I liked how they explained that um, when each of the systems connect, like if not necessarily the micro to, the meso, but like when the macro to the meso connect, and how that can affect the micro as well. Does that make sense? So each of those outer systems, those connections, um, they can affect the micro. And I liked how it kind of like kept bringing it down to how at the end of it all, the microsystems, the families and the schools and the peers are affected through the relationships that the other systems have with one another. Anyway, so it was a different look at it for me. But I'm glad that I kind of got a refresher because I understand it a little bit more now.
I liked how you said it all connected in the discussion. I don't know. Yeah, the discussion board before this one. We were talking about how like it's crazy to think how all the different like how everything connects with each other, and it's kind of like it kind of does this circle, and even like different threats to family and stuff. How they all can somehow connect to each other. Like mine was like cohabitation and somebody's is like poverty or something, and it's like, well, cohabitation sometimes leads to poverty, and so it was interesting just to see how they all connected. But anyways, that was just a random. Then the next question is, what system or level do you personally feel would be the most difficult to advocate? I said that, I don't know, because I'm kind of shy, so I think just going out in the community would be, like, scary for me. But, I don't know, after I watched the video, I was kind of, like, more inspired to get out there and to let people know what's going on. But I still feel like just because I'm, I guess, more reserved and shy, that it would be really hard for me. It would definitely be a challenge. But what about you guys?
For me, I thought just from the way that the macro system was described as like a much larger system, and for like the government, I thought that that one would be more difficult just because when it comes to the government, I feel like instead of dealing with just like a smaller group of people that you might deal with like your family or your community, you might be dealing with like the whole country. And I feel like depending on what you're advocating for, you're always going to have people for it and against it. But I feel like when it comes to the government, people just have a lot more negative feelings towards it. So you might have to deal with a lot more difficult people and situations. So it might be harder to get your point through to them. And if you're like advocating towards the government, I feel like it takes a ton of work to try to get what you really want across to them. And if it does get across, you're like super lucky because it doesn't happen that often.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that the macro system, the larger, you know, the the entity or the group that you're working with, the more intimidating it is. And so I try and think of like maybe the baby steps that would be involved. And, you know, things like, I mean, a little baby step, which I am going to do, is to just sign up for the United Families International emails to be sent to me and then maybe donate some money to that organization. And so that would be a baby step. Another baby step, I think, is to kind of find out who your local representatives, government representatives are. And if you see, you know, some kind of an issue or you feel like there's something in your community that, you know, you don't like or you want to see changed, whether it be um, the sex education curriculum being changed in your school or whatever, that you just write a letter. And you know, take that little step. We were having an issue in our school district about the school years. There were the teachers association. They were trying to change the school year to more of a year-round school year, and it wasn't our family. That was taking away from our family time because the longer summers were important for us, particularly because we had kids in all three different types of school. You know, we had an elementary, middle, and high school. And so it was important for them to have at least one time during the year where they were all out of school so that we could have, you know, some family vacations and family time. So anyway, we started going to city council meetings where it got really heated because it seemed like it was parents going against the teachers union. And even teachers were not really excited about the year-round school. Some of them were okay with it, but others weren't necessarily okay with it. But the teachers union they were bullies, and they were just like heckling the parents who would stand up and talk about how they didn't want that change and they wanted a more traditional school year. And so the newspaper started coming in and covering these meetings. And at one point, I just decided to sit down and write to the newspaper editor about my reasons for preferring the traditional school, the school system. So I wrote a letter to the editor of the paper, not thinking anything of it. Well, my friend called me like the next day and said, "Guess what, Susie? You're in the paper." And so they had actually they had printed my article, and anyways, it was kind of a good feeling to feel like my voice was being heard, and that, you know, even though I didn't want to get up in front of the city council. Speaking in front of people terrifies me. My words could be powerful through the written word, and I prefer writing anyway. So I think that we all can like take something that, you know, we are good at and put it to use at a higher level. That's just my 2 cents.
I really liked that you mentioned the taking baby steps thing because I never even thought about that, but I think that that's a good way to maybe do something that seems really intimidating to like get into it very slowly. I thought that was good.
Well, I kind of feel like that's how Kelly, the woman who gave the presentation, she's really involved with United Families. Like when I first heard her speak, I was like, oh, you're just like a normal little Mormon mom. She had the same kind of life as me. She got married when she was like 19, started having kids. I got married at 19. I had my last kid when I was 26. I didn't have a college education. I was just like staying at home with my kids. And that's how she was. But by, you know, one step at a time, little steps at a time, she has ended up being, you know, this person who has an influence on a really large amount of people. And so it makes me think that that's maybe, you know, that was her path and that's how she got there. And we all have to kind of trust in whatever path the Heavenly Father will give us, and that, you know, He knows what our capabilities are, and we can just kind of trust that path. But I was really surprised when I first heard her speak. I was like, she's kind of just a normal lady. She's not a super amazing speaker or anything, but she's doing a lot of good in the world. So
Susie, I really like that too, because I was like, oh, it was like, oh, I could do this then. You know, she's a stay-at-home mom, and yet she's doing all this good. And I was like, oh, I can too, I guess. You know? I liked the thing. So the next question was, what system or level do you personally feel is the most important to advocate? I should clarify. So the last one, it was like community and up. I would be so scared to go to the government.
yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like it's good. I think education is a huge part of things. Like, I know she talked about like the language in her thing, and just how some people don't know the language and what it, like, they kind of change what the words mean, and so it may seem good, but it really is bad. And so I think just educating, just on a basic level, like just people just that are close to you or anything, to just get that education out there would be a huge help to promote the family. Like, I think blogging would be a great way to be able to do that and just share it with your loved ones, or, I mean, friends and friends of friends, just like, I don't know, because it's something really easy, and we're normally all comfortable talking to family and friends. But I don't know, I feel like just starting on that basic level, like in the baby steps, but educating people would be a huge benefit to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought very similar to what you just said, and I put down like that the micro or the meso system would be like the most important to at least start with, just because since the micro deals with a lot of family, you tend to be more passionate towards them, so it's easier to get your word out to them or for them and become like more supportive and stronger and like research more things. And then when it comes to the meso system, because it involves like school systems and stuff, if you have kids, you are still relating things with them because it's school, so they are gonna go through it or have been through it. So it's still something that you're really passionate about, and especially in like our country, education and things that are getting added to it or taken away from it is like being broadcasted a lot, and people are just becoming more aware of what's going on and like passionate about getting certain things that are out of the school systems. And that's what I thought.
Yeah, I think that's really true, Paige. I think that public education is something that we all really need to be kind of more mindful of, and it's something that that, like you said, we're seeing lots of different people talk about what's happening in the public school system and in that process, and there's different articles being posted all over Facebook and that kind of thing to help us kind of get an idea of what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think that will make a difference for you guys. You're younger and you're going to be having children, and you can hopefully get an idea of what's out there and what you want for your kids and what you want to avoid and all that stuff. But I was also thinking, so when my kids were little, I just volunteered a lot at the schools, and I think that really helped. It just made a big difference when I built a relationship with my kids as teachers. And so we formed a relationship of trust and respect, and so we could, she would accept some of the ideas that I had because she got to know me, and the same thing with her, I got to know her, and I would get to know, or yeah, I was always female teachers in elementary school anyway, but I would get to know them and kind of start to have a better understanding and trust of their teaching methods and stuff. And so I think that's really important. And then the other thing I was thinking of when Shay was talking about our influence, and there really is like a ripple effect like if you teach something that one of these classes that has to do with family, any kind of statistic about something that strengthens the family or tears down the family. Like we learned a lot about cohabitation in one of my classes, and all these statistics about how cohabitation is actually a real threat to the family. And so as you share those things, that information, then people have that information to then share it with the people in their close association, and it can kind of have this ripple effect, and you'd be surprised at how far-reaching that can go if you're just willing to open up and talk about it. Just talk to the people that are your friends or your family or whatever. I'm the oldest of 10 kids, and so I talk with my brothers and sisters all the time. I'm excited to share with them what I'm learning. But that's right there. That's like all my sisters. That's another 4 or 5 people that I talk to, and then they go and talk to their friends about it. So I think there's more in just us sharing it with 1 or 2 people that is happening, because then they can go on and share it with other people.
I really like what you just said, Susie. Sorry. My kid's going crazy.
Yeah.
He's not happy. But, yeah, just, like, everything, I mean, it gets spread. You look at just, like, how easy things are. I mean, someone likes something on Facebook, and then someone else likes it, and someone else, and it just goes all over. So I don't think we realize, like, just one little thing or, like, one little email, how much of an effect it really has on things. But that's all of the questions. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I don't.
Nope.
Okay. Sorry my child was going to
Okay.
So we're good for next week then, same time, or?
Yeah, same time. I'll get it right on my calendar next time.
Okay. You're going to do the
I'll do
summary?
Yeah, I'll post the summary, and then